Hello, I'm Vara,
And I'm Roxy.
and you're listening to VCR. Hey, Roxy, how you doing?
Hello, hello, hello. I'm doing great,
Awesome
actually.
sauces. Well, that's always good that you're doing great in your little dark cavernous
You know,
room with the
my
darkness.
my
Your
dark layer.
yes, your little dark plant in the dark corner in your dark
hmm
doing dark things. Uh,
Very vampirous in
I
here.
have, I have a story for you. Let me share a story. So,
Ooh,
it's
okay. I love a good story.
yeah. So one time, there are these two podcasters. And one's name was Roxy, the other one's name was Vada, and Vada was just a saint of a man.
Oh,
And
Lord.
he and he and him and Roxy were having dinner at this place, and it was just Roxy wasn't abusive. She paid for the meal afterwards. Uh,
It's definitely a fairy tale.
right. So this is what you would call a fairy tale because none of that shit actually happened.
Oh my gosh.
You know. No one thought they were married. It was a pleasant evening. so, so now, today's show with the darkness and that bit of a lie there. We're talking about dark fairy tales today and doing some research. Oh my God, fairy
Oof.
tales are super disturbing, and I,
Yeah.
I think a lot of us are pretty familiar with the basic darkness of the Grimm stories. But I don't think in some cases we really understand how dark some of that shit is
Ooh.
and how bizarre some of it is. And one Grimm's fairy tale well, it's not Grimm's fairy tale, one fairy tale, Pinocchio, how super dark that thing was.
Yeah, that one
Mhm.
is wild.
Mm-hmm. I was sharing a little bit of it with.
What do you mean?
Yeah, I was like so weird. So let's jump into some super dark fairy tales. Let's start off with a couple of. Do you have a beloved fairy tale? Like, do you have a fairy tale that was your favorite, Roxy, growing up?
I don't know. I guess the Three Bears?
The Three Bears? Okay, no, that
Goldilocks?
that that's kind of a good one. Um, was there a favorite like Disney one?
Oh, Disney?
Hmm.
I guess I was always the Little Mermaid girl.
Hmm. Okay, all right, that's fair enough. You know anything about the Little Mermaid?
Um, I know that the story is way different from what Disney says.
Yes.
It's way worse.
Yeah. It really, really is. So let's jump into Roxy's favorite here. Um, The Little Mermaid. Um, but before we do that, I'm trying to get this one because this was really good. Um, and it blew my mind that this was a thing. And it's like, how do we not know this one? Um, this is it. So remind me to bring up the girl without hands, okay?
Ooh,
So
okay.
let's go into the Little Mermaid. So Little Mermaid, of course, Disney does the Disney version. We all know how that
Mhm.
goes. Super happy ending. She marries the prince. They're happily ever after. Blah 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 blah. Right? Defeats a sea witch. That's not actually how that story goes. The Little
Mhm.
Mermaid is originally a novel written by Hans Christian Andersen, and what ends up happening is okay. So in the contract with the Sea Witch, remember how the Sea Witch removes Ariel's voice.
Both,
It puts
yeah.
it into a little shell, and
In
she
a shell,
keeps it.
yeah.
That's not what actually happens in
Mm-mm.
the actual story. She actually cuts off Ariel's tongue, and that way she can't talk as a human.
Yeah.
She becomes a human. The prince, long story short, falls in love with somebody else and marries somebody else.
hmm
Now, because Ursula kind of in a way feels bad for Ariel, she says, "Look, you can still have everything you want. I can give you everything you want. You just gotta kill the prince. We kill him, I bring him back, and everything's gonna be fine." Ariel has a change of heart, maybe because she's heartbroken and bitter now. I don't know. But she has a change of heart and decides she doesn't want this. So then she decides to throw herself off a cliff.
Hmm.
And throwing herself off the cliff, she becomes sea foam and dies. Now, there's a couple different variations, like just hits the water, becomes sea foam, right? It's also been said that her father turns her into the sea foam, probably before
Mm.
she hits the ocean. So there's that too, because that kind of makes sense. Why would she turn into sea foam unless he did it? Because
Yeah.
as a human, you're just gonna hit and die, but she becomes sea foam. So more or less
Yeah. That makes sense
that.
that he would do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wouldn't they just be able to turn her back into a mermaid if she lived?
Maybe, but I think with some of these fairy tales, the whole point is once I think the other thing with a lot of these fairy tales that I've noticed is the theme of death, and that death, no matter who you are,
We'll
is
always
not
get you.
is not reversible. Unless you're doing something really weird, which we'll go into that later. So there's that, and then there's one that I always kind of enjoyed, but that was really weird for me after I learned more about it was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Mm.
Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs is a lot creepier than what you think it is. I don't care what Disney has done lately. I haven't b bothered to watch their live version of it, so I
I
can't.
haven't seen it either, I don't think.
Yeah,
Nothing
I've heard
new.
nothing good about it though.
Yeah.
But the actual Grimm storytell is pretty dark in itself. Where Snow White, we all know the traditional, hey, she's lost in the woods, all this other stuff. The thing that they kind of leave out here is something far more disturbing. Um, let's take the dwarfs. So the dwarfs are living in the woods. No one
Mhm.
ever asks, why are the dwarfs living in the woods?
Yeah. Why are they?
Good question. Here's the reason why. So they had a deformity. They were dwarfs. And so they weren't part of regular society. So
Right.
what ends up happening is they're forced to live isolated. Okay, so you have seven male dwarfs living isolated in the deep woods. And I know Disney makes it like, oh, this magnificent
Magical,
little
right?
cottage. But then the issue is the dwarfs stumble upon what would have been Snow White would have been a teenage girl, right? So they stumble upon a teenage girl with amnesia. And then they take her back to their place, and that's where it gets dark. They don't
Mm.
exactly express what they've been doing with Snow White that entire time. But there's a girl there who doesn't know who they are.
Right.
And the thing is, they're probably lying to her as to, oh, this is your role here with us,
Hmm. This is what
seven
you do.
deformed men. And, that's something that no one really talks about. That they probably took advantage of Snow White,
Oh, for sure.
you know, in all kinds of ways. So that's a darker side of Snow White that a lot of people don't talk about is like what was really happening in the woods. And the woods were always a classic Greek metaphor for things
Hmm.
like the woods at night especially were a
Yeah.
Greek metaphor for like sexual behaviors and stuff like that. So that was
Uh-huh.
also kind of an issue. And that's something that they just never talked about.
No.
The other thing that we have here is let's go ahead and jump into what's another one of your delightful childhood ones that we can ruin.
Oh no, Sleeping Beauty.
Mm.
Oh, that one's gonna get destroyed.
Actually, you know what? I don't know much about Sleeping Beauty, to be honest. So
Really?
I don't know how
Okay.
that actually ends. But I will jump into Rapunzel. Uh,
Oh.
Rapunzel, not so dark, but a really fucked up story. So Rapunzel, we all know Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair. So the prince
Hmm.
climbs her hair to rescue her and to be with her, and they live happily ever after. That's not what happens in the original. He climbs up her hair. He is with her, but he never returns for her. And the issue is they make, how do I put this? They point out that he may have left her pregnant in the tower
Hmm.
because she's been so isolated she doesn't know what's happening, but she makes reference to how her clothes don't fit her anymore in the original because
Ah,
she's of course growing bigger and she's, been impregnated and left there by the prince.
wow.
And that's how Rapunzel actually ends.
That is awful.
Mhm. Abandoned in a tower and pregnant. Yep. hmm Aren't fairy tales fun?
They're wonderful.
They're
Like
like so joyous.
they're so what
hmm
is it? They're so romantic.
They are. And then there are how do I put it? There are fairy tales that not even Disney will touch. So let's jump into it.
The one about the hands.
Yes, The Girl Without Hands. It's a classic fairy tale from this is the Brothers Grimm. Um, and it is a story about a father who sells his daughter to the devil.
Mm, sells her?
Sells her to the devil. Now, let me try to break down as to why. It
I was
was
gonna say, what did he get in return for her? Like, why did he do that?
Okay, so it says here the deal. A miller facing financial hardship makes a pact with the devil, promising him what's behind his mill in exchange for wealth. He delivers this. This to his apple tree, but is actually his daughter. So in other words, like the farmer thinks, behind his mill he has this apple tree, right? And the devil kind of tricks him and he's like, okay, I'll give you wealth for what's behind your mill. And the dad's thinking, oh, it's the apple tree. Okay, well, yeah, I have the apple tree. In reality, the daughter was behind the mill at the time. So
Oh,
he wants the daughter. Now,
so he unknowingly.
yeah, see, one knows more than the other. So he
Hmm.
makes the deal. Um, he claim when the devil comes to collect, he demands the miller's daughter. The miller realizes his mistake, tries to avoid fulfilling the bargain. Does not happen,
Mm.
obviously. The daughter is resistant. The daughter, who is pure and devout, resists the devil's claim by keeping herself clean and pure, which prevents him from taking her. Now, the further betrayal comes is enraged by her purity, the devil instructs the father to cut off uh, her hands to make her unclean. I'm
Oh,
not sure how that does that. The desperate father, under threat from the devil, does what he's supposed to and cuts her hands off. Um, Let's go into what kind of wonder what happens to the daughter. While the core of the story involves the father is essentially selling his daughter to the devil, it's important to remember that this is a fairy tale with symbolic meaning, blah 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 blah. What
blah,
happens to
blah,
I
blah,
want to know what
blah.
happens to the daughter. So, um,
She lost her hands. That's what happened.
well, no, that does happen. The Miller embodies the character of weakness and moral failure, succumbing to the devil's influence, right? But I think there was also a thing with that the devil couldn't collect on her for some other reason. Um, what happened to the daughter? Because the thing is with fairy tales, something always fucking there's always some
Maybe this was one of
stupid
those that doesn't
version.
really.
Um, her good nature and faith can lead her eventual rescue and happiness. Okay, so she ends up being fine. So, because of her, like, it says her good nature and faith. led her to eventually rescue and happiness. Because I thought I did read something about this where it was saying that God had protected the daughter because she was virtuous and pure, and so the
Hmm.
devil could not collect on the daughter. But talk about a fucked up story.
That's crazy.
Let me go cut your hands off because daddy made a deal.
Then I accidentally sold you to the devil,
Yeah,
so
so,
let me cut your hands off.
I'm
So
sure
I don't
you
gotta give you up.
understand.
Oh my God.
That's pretty wild. Like,
That is
hey,
crazy.
that's crazy, but what can you say? I mean, these things were supposed to have like these dark, meanings to them. And
There's always some kind of like morale behind each story.
yeah,
This is
yeah,
why you shouldn't
abs
do this. This is why you shouldn't do that. This is why
mhm.
you keep your promises. Like,
Exactly, exactly. That's kind of the other thing about it is like there's supposed to be some horrible dark
mhm.
morality about it, and I don't know if that was the best way to do it. But back then, like kids
I
weren't
mean, scare it into you, right?
I know, seriously. But back then, kids weren't like what they are today. Kids are kids today. Back then, like, 13, you were expected to be married at some point. And in some cultures,
Mhm.
15. But that was expected of you. So hearing these fairy tales at that age wasn't so much a, hey, there's something to go to sleep with. It's like, hey, quit your shit. This is the morality of this. This is
You
what's
sure it's gonna happen to
happening.
you.
Like, don't be fucking going into the woods. We done told you. Uh, so, one that I do want to mention, the juniper tree. Have you ever heard of
Hmm.
the juniper tree?
No, I haven't.
Okay, let me go ahead and ruin this for you. Uh,
Right.
I'm just going to read it off. So, a young boy's stepmother is incredibly envious of the wealth and prosperity he will inherit when his father dies, believing, uh, believing her daughter to be entitled to such prosperity. The evil stepmother strikes off the head of her stepson by shutting the lid of a box on
She
him.
just guillotined him.
Yeah, she basically did. And her daughter into thinking and here's the fucked up thing is she makes her daughter believe that it was her daughter's fault.
Oh, wow.
The wicked woman,
Great parenting.
oh, it gets better. The wicked woman bakes the boy's body into a black pudding. Now, let me explain.
What?
Yeah, let me explain European pudding compared to American pudding. Our version of American pudding is like what we think it is, like vanilla pudding, chocolate pudding.
Chocolate pudding. Yeah.
It's
Their
it's a
pudding is like bread,
no, their pudding is
right?
cake. So
Cake.
basically, yeah,
Yeah.
it is bread, but it is cake. Basically, is what they call a pudding. Why? I don't know.
Hmm.
They're British. Europeans, what can I say? Um, so the wicked woman bakes the boy's body into a black pudding and serves it to her husband, his
Mm.
dad, basically, which he hungrily eats for dinner. The boy's stepsister collects his bones and buries them under a juniper tree in her grief. She witnesses a great illusion as her brother is reborn out of fire and mist as a bird, singing the tale of his death. Will the bird get its revenge? I don't know. Let's Google
Hmm.
it.
Let's find out.
So it's that's pretty depressing in itself,
That's crazy.
that
Kill,
you
kill
would,
the kid and serve him to his father. That's wild.
yeah, that is wild. So like
What?
tells are pretty fucked up as well.
I don't think if I had kids, I don't think I'd be reading these to my kids.
No, it's not exactly something I would read to them either. It's it's pretty disturbing. I
It's
mean,
very disturbing.
who the fuck would feed their
The
child to
people
their
in the
dad?
1900, 1800s, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. It's it's pretty bad. Get his revenge. Let's see.
Are you seeing if the ghost gets his revenge?
Yeah, I just want to see what happens there. And it says, yes, in the juniper tree, the boy eventually gets his revenge on his evil stepmother. After his murder, his bones are buried under the juniper tree, which I read. He is reborn into a bird. This bird, with the help of other people, extract revenge on the stepmother, who is then killed by the boy in his bird form.
Ooh,
Good for him. Good for him.
good.
Yeah,
Justice
um,
served.
really, I mean, it's just, who the fuck does that kind of shit? But let's get into
Seriously.
one of my more favorite, one of my personal favorites growing up was Pinocchio. And of course, the
Hmm.
Disney version of Pinocchio. And then some, like one of those little cheapy claymation versions of Pinocchio
Oh yeah.
that come out too. But I never realized how dark and screwed up Pinocchio is.
Yeah, it's wild.
hmm So I'm gonna give you all the Cliff Note version because I read part of it last night and it was really fucked up. So technically, Pinocchio dies and then lives. It's the weirdest thing ever. So the fox and the cat are important. The fox and the cat are con artists, just like they are in the movie, right?
Hmm.
And what they do is they con Pinocchio into he has two gold coins. All right. He's supposed to take it to his dad, Geppetto. But then the fox and the cat tell him, hey, look, if you bury it in this field of miracles, uh, the wait 20 minutes, a tree will pop up and it will produce gold coins for you, and you'll never have to blah blah blah, all the traditional
Right,
bullshit.
right.
So he's out there trying to do it, but something goes wrong, and then they try to suffocate Pinocchio. And that doesn't work because he's a fucking puppet, right? So
Right.
they get tired of trying to suffocate him and then run off, and then they come back, and then in that fight of trying to suffocate them, he bites off the cat's paw, which is
Hmm.
important because later on this is how he identifies, oh, it's you guys trying to kill me. And so what they do is they take Pinocchio and then they hang him and he dies that way.
Hmm.
But then it never explains what exactly brings him back to life other than um
That is
some
not a real boy?
well, partly, but some woodland animals like come and get him
Hmm.
and they take him to this ferry. Now the ferry in itself is pretty depressing because the fairy at this house literally opens up with a statement that she's waiting to die and just waiting for the hearse to come and pick her up.
Oh my
And I was
God.
like, the fuck? So,
Yeah, this is who we want to go to for help.
exactly. So then all these other woodland animals start, like, the fairy claims to gather several doctors who are woodland
Mhm.
animals, and like the owl says, oh, he's fucking dead. And the rabbits are like, no, he's not quite dead. And they do something that brings his ass back to life, right? So he's
Hmm.
back to life, and he's actually trying to run to go catch up with his dad, Geppetto, because Geppetto's now worried about him. And for some reason, Geppetto thinks, hey, let me go look in the ocean. That's how his ass gets eaten by a whale, which they do not refer to as a whale. They refer to it as a dogfish that eats
Dogfish.
Geppetto. Yeah. So then
I wonder why
Pinocchio,
dogfish.
yeah, Pinocchio's trying to go find his dad, but then his buddy, Candlewick is the name of the kid, talks him into going to this island where they're gonna party and live it up. So he fucking goes with them.
Epstein Island.
Yeah, so basically Epstein's Island, where he's there for 5 months. And then he turns into a donkey. They wake up, turn into a donkey. His best friend dies as a donkey.
Hmm.
Pinocchio is sold to a circus. Then he's become pretty useless to them. So this guy wants to buy him to skin him to turn him into a drum. So
Hmm.
he buys him, takes Pinocchio to the sea, throws him into the sea so he'll drown, and then he'll go collect the donkey's body and skin it. Well, while Pinocchio's drowning, the fish come and eat the donkey skin and and under the donkey skin, he's a puppet, and he becomes a puppet boy again. I don't know how the fuck that happens.
That's
But then
crazy.
he fucking, the guy's all pissed off, and anyway,
Where did his donkey
he's
go?
like, what the fuck? So then he gets into other weird adventures like that. And then eventually, because he's in the sea, he finds Geppetto. They go back home. Geppetto is sick. Uh, Pinocchio's working for years to try to maintain the family, but he's raised 40 pennies. And for some reason, he's going to go into town and buy a suit where he finds someone who's, like all fucked up. So he gives
Mm.
them the 40 pennies. It ends up being the fairy in disguise. So then Pinocchio goes home, goes to sleep, has this nightmare that he fucking died, and though so then he wakes up, and when he wakes up, he's a real boy.
The real boy.
And then the suit is there, and then there are 40 gold coins, and Geppetto starts getting better. And I was like, the fuck is happening?
Because he did the right thing.
Yes, he did the right thing, but this was all clearly
Like,
like
wow, that was a long way to go just to show you to do the right thing.
yeah, I was like, this is clearly like I am doing so
Well, I
much
guess it was just like a long way
drugs.
to say, like, every decision you make
Mm.
is a decision for the future.
Yes, and
So if you continue to make bad decisions, you're going to end up a donkey in the ocean.
yeah, and it also goes to show, drugs do fucked up things to
Yeah. Oh,
the
yeah. Because
player.
remember they were fed drugs or something.
No, no, I'm talking about for the writer. Like
Oh,
the
the right.
drugs, the drugs really do some fucked up things for you when you're writing. It's like I ain't worried about Pinocchio.
Acid. Stay
I'm,
off
I'm
acid.
telling you, like that, like oh, it'd be really great. A dogfish ate him, and it's months before he finds his dad. So like, how long has Geppetto been living in this fucking well slash dogfish?
Oh
And I
my
was like,
God.
the fuck. So it's wild, totally wild.
Definitely. Definitely a roller coaster.
So those are just a few dark fairy tales. Maybe you out there have a better dark fairy tale that maybe we haven't discussed here and you want to share
Ooh.
with us and tell us, hey, oh my God, this is way more wicked than what you guys
Ooh,
talk
please.
about.
Please share.
Definitely. Yeah. Let us know. Email us to the VCR show at gmail.com. Check out, hey, I normally say the defunct website. I actually have an article up on it, and there'll be another article coming up this coming week. So good for me, right? So
Yeah.
check out the
All time.
website. Exactly, right? It's been a minute. Check out the website, thevcrshow.com, and all of our other social medias. And if you want to express your dark fairy tale fantasies with Roxy, you can do so at her social medias, which are.
On Facebook at Roxy Perez Curvy Model, on Instagram at PopRocks428, and on TikTok at the Pop Rocks. And Pop Rocks is spelled POPROXX.
And as always, I'm Vara.
And I'm Roxy.
And you've been listening to VCR.
Bye.
Bye bye. You have been listening to VCR, creative content by Richard Christopher Vara and Roxy Perez. Logo by Richard Christopher Vara with assistance from Annie Ramirez. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach us at thevcrshow@gmail.com or our social medias at Instagram and Twitter at the VCR Show. And you can also check out our content at thevcrshow.com. The show song is Addict by Nefex, instrumental, and you can find them on YouTube Music Library.